You are the light of the world. In the quiet moments of the soul, a teaching of Jesus Christ resonates with gentle intimacy. You are the light of the world. This is not a lofty demand, but a loving affirmation of the very identity of each of us. He does not say that we must become light, but that we are light. In a world sometimes filled with the dark patches of suffering, doubt, and loneliness, each of us is invited to shine. That light does not need to be a dazzling, brilliant halo. Sometimes it is simply a comforting smile, a hand extended in support, a sincere word, or a small act of kindness. That light is the presence of compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love. This light does not originate from within us. It is a reflection of the love and truth of God. It is a flame kindled by eternal love itself, and our duty is to keep that flame from dying, to courageously carry it into the darkest places. Every action that comes from a kind heart is a ray of light that warms the world. As he instructed, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Therefore, never fear the darkness, nor feel insecure for being just a tiny spark. For in the deep night, even a single flickering ray of light is enough to kindle hope and illuminate the path for lost steps. Before we begin, we kindly invite you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel to help spread this valuable content to your family and friends. We thank you, and now we invite you to listen. 1. Light is nature, not a choice. We often think that becoming light is a task, a goal to strive for. But Jesus' philosophy affirms the opposite. Light is already your inherent nature when you are in Him. The issue is not how to create light, but how to remove the things that are obscuring the light already present in your soul. One afternoon, sitting by the shore of the Sea of Galilee, the Apostle Peter mused to Jesus, "Teacher, I am a humble fisherman, with calloused hands and clumsy words. How can I be a light to others as you teach? I fear I am not capable." Jesus smiled, picking up a pebble covered in moss and mud. He gently washed it in the lake water, revealing its glistening veins under the afternoon sun. "Peter, look, the nature of this stone is to be solid and have beautiful veins. The mud is just something clinging to the outside. I do not ask you to become something you are not. I only invite you to let the Father's love wash away the fears, the insecurities, the worldly mud, so that your true nature, a beloved creation, may shine. You don't need to become light. You are light. Don't hide it anymore." 2. Light must be expressed through action. A lamp that is lit but then covered with a basket is completely useless. Similarly, faith and love in the heart, if not expressed through concrete actions, are merely empty concepts. Light must shine, meaning it must be seen through deeds. At a market in Capernaum, a tax collector named Levi, despised by the people, heard Jesus' teachings. He met with him privately and asked, "Rabbi, my heart is stirred by your words. I want to change. What must I do?" Jesus looked straight into his eyes, with a gaze free of judgment. "Levi, you say you believe in mercy. Then let others see that mercy. A lamp cannot say it is bright. It simply shines. Don't just talk about righteousness, practice it. Return what you have taken in excess. Don't just talk about charity. Open your home and invite the poor to dine. Then the light within you will speak for itself." 3. The power of a small flame. We often underestimate our small actions, thinking they are not enough to change the world. But this philosophy teaches that in thick darkness, even a tiny flame becomes incredibly precious and has the power to guide. Never underestimate an act of kindness, no matter how small. One night, Jesus and the Apostle Andrew were walking through a dark alley in Jerusalem. They saw a poor widow carefully sharing the little oil from her lamp with a beggar who had fallen in the darkness. Andrew whispered, "Teacher, that lamp is too small. It can't light the whole street. What good is it?" Jesus replied, "Andrew, look. To that beggar, at this moment, that lamp is not small. It is the whole world. Light is not measured by its size, but by the darkness it dispels. A small act of love, like this flame, has the power to drive away the darkness of despair in a soul." 4. Light is a reflection, not self-generated. Humans are not the ultimate source of light. We are like the moon, which does not emit its own light, but only reflects the light of the sun. This philosophy teaches humility. The light within us is a reflection of the love and truth of God. The closer we are to the sun of righteousness, the more brightly we shine. A Pharisee scholar named Nicodemus came to see Jesus at night. He said, "Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him." Jesus replied, "Nicodemus, you see the works I do and call it light. But I tell you the truth, I do nothing on my own. A branch cannot bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Likewise, the light you see in me is the light of the Father who sent me. A person can only shine when they realize they are not the source of light, but a mirror reflecting the eternal light of God." 5. The purpose of light is to illuminate the way for others. Light does not exist for itself. It does not shine to admire its own beauty. Its ultimate purpose is to serve, to help others see the way, to dispel fear, and to bring safety. When we use our talents, knowledge, and wealth only to glorify ourselves, we go against this philosophy. A group of wealthy people invited Jesus to a feast. They boasted about their expensive olive oil lamps that brightly lit their entire mansion. One of them asked, "Teacher, isn't the light in our house beautiful?" Jesus looked out the window, where the poor were sitting in darkness. He turned back and said, "Your light is indeed brilliant, but it only illuminates those who are already in the light. A truly valuable lamp is one that is brought out into the dark alley, to show a blind person the steps, to help a lost child find their mother. Your light is only truly light when it helps others find their way to the Father's house." 6. Light requires courage. Shining into the darkness means exposing what is wrong, unjust, and evil that is hiding. This will certainly make the forces of darkness uncomfortable and reactive. Therefore, to be a light, one needs the courage to speak the truth and live by it, despite the risks. When Jesus healed a man blind from birth on the Sabbath, many were angry. The apostles worriedly said to him, "Teacher, they are trying to harm you. Perhaps we should lay low for a while, not draw any more attention." Jesus calmly replied, "A lamp is lit to shine, not to run from the darkness. It is precisely because darkness exists that light must shine all the more. Courage is not the absence of fear, but doing what needs to be done even when afraid. If our light doesn't make the darkness uncomfortable, then perhaps it isn't bright enough. 7. Light is truth, and truth sets you free. Darkness is synonymous with ignorance, error, and slavery to false prejudices. Light is truth, the truth about God, about human nature, and about love. When people live in this truth, they are freed from the chains of hatred, jealousy, and despair. A Samaritan woman who had 5 husbands and was living with a man who was not her husband met Jesus at a well. She tried to avoid the topic of her personal life, but Jesus compassionately revealed the truth about her life. The woman was stunned, but did not feel condemned. Instead, she felt understood. Jesus said, "I do not say this to judge you. I say it so that you may see. The light of truth is not meant to shame you, but to illuminate the path to living water. When you bravely face your own truth, you will no longer have to hide in the darkness of deceit. You will be free." 8. Light erases all boundaries. The sunlight shines on the righteous and the unrighteous, on the Jew and the Roman alike. Similarly, the light of the gospel is not reserved for any one nation, class, or group of people. It is universal, capable of breaking down the walls of social prejudice. A Roman centurion came to ask Jesus to heal his servant. The apostles were surprised, as Jews did not typically associate with the occupying forces. The apostle John asked quietly, "Teacher, he is a Gentile. Why should we help one who oppresses our people?" Jesus looked at the centurion, who stood humbly and full of faith. He said to the apostles, "When the sun rises, does it choose to shine only on the fields of the Jews and skip the vineyards of the Romans? The light of my Father is the same. It shines on all who open their hearts to receive it." The pain of that servant is still pain. The faith of this centurion is still faith. True light sees no boundaries. It only sees souls in need of warmth. 9. Light brings about transformation. Light does not just help us see, it also transforms all things. Sunlight makes seeds sprout and plants bear fruit. The light of love and truth is the same. When it shines into a soul, it does not leave that soul unchanged. It warms, heals, and causes the hidden good to blossom. Zacchaeus, a wealthy and hated chief tax collector, climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus. When Jesus called him by name and invited himself to his house, Zacchaeus was astounded. The presence of Jesus in his home, like a stream of light, melted his hardened heart. Without a long sermon from Jesus, Zacchaeus stood up on his own and said, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus smiled and said to everyone, "Today salvation has come to this house. Do you see? Light does not need to condemn darkness. By its mere presence, it causes the seeds of goodness, no matter how deeply buried, to stir and rise." 10. Light is a symbol of hope that never dies. Even in the darkest night, the existence of stars is a promise that dawn will come. This final philosophy is a reassurance. No matter how dark the world may seem, no matter how much suffering and evil appear to be winning, the existence of light, even just a few faithful individuals, is proof that God has not abandoned the world and that hope will never be completely extinguished. On the night before he was arrested, in the Garden of Gethsemane, as the apostles slept and Jesus prayed in agony, darkness seemed to envelop everything. The apostle Thomas, the doubter, suddenly awoke and saw his teacher alone. He asked fearfully, "Teacher, darkness surrounds us. The enemy is coming. Where is hope?" Jesus, though his soul was heavy, looked up at the night sky and pointed to a shining star. "Thomas, look. Though dark clouds cover the sky, That star is still there. It has not disappeared. Its light is still traveling thousands of miles to reach your eyes. Likewise, though the darkness of betrayal and death is about to fall, the light of the Father never goes out. Even when you see only darkness, believe that the dawn is coming. Be those stars for one another in this long night, a reminder of a morning that will come. That is hope. 11. Light is shared without being diminished. In the physical world, when we give something away, we no longer have it. But with the light of the Spirit, love, wisdom, hope, the opposite is true. Sharing light does not make us darker, but makes the world brighter. One candle can light thousands of other candles without its own flame diminishing. At the home of the sisters Martha and Mary in Bethany, many people came to hear Jesus teach. Martha whispered worriedly to him, "Teacher, the oil in the lamps is about to run out. If we keep them lit for so many people, the whole house will soon be in darkness." Jesus smiled, took a burning candle, and used it to light another unlit candle. The room immediately became brighter. "Martha, look, did this flame weaken when it shared its life with the other flame? Not at all. The love and truth of the Father are the same. When you share it, you do not lose it. You only multiply it. The more you give, the brighter the world becomes, and the light within you does not diminish. 12. Light reveals not only the bad, but also the hidden good. We often fear the light because it can expose our flaws and sins. But we forget that light also has a more wondrous function. It allows the seeds of goodness, the forgotten beauties, the precious gems covered in mud, to shine. They brought to Jesus a woman caught in the act of adultery. They wanted to see how he would handle this darkness. But instead of looking at the woman's sin, Jesus silently wrote on the ground. When he looked up, he said, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." The light from his words shone not only on the woman, but also into the hearts of her accusers, revealing their own shortcomings. When they left one by one, Jesus asked the woman, "Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now, and leave your life of sin." His light not only exposed the sin, but also illuminated the woman's remaining dignity and her capacity to start over. 13. Sometimes, light is empathetic silence. Light is not always words or grand actions. Sometimes, in the face of another's extreme pain, a silent presence, a hand held, a shared look, shines brighter and provides more warmth than 1,000 words of advice. Silence can also be a language of light. When he heard that his dear friend Lazarus had died, Jesus went to Bethany. He saw Mary and the others weeping. He did not immediately preach about the resurrection or the power of God. The scripture records, Jesus wept. The Apostle Thomas, seeing this, was perplexed. "Teacher, you have the power to raise the dead. Why do you weep?" Jesus, with tears in his eyes, replied, "Thomas, before the light of power is shown, the light of humanity must be shared. Their pain is real, and at this moment, my heart aches with them. Sometimes the best way to dry someone's tears is to let them know that your tears are also falling for them. 14. True light has the weight of truth. There are artificial lights, sparkling on the outside but empty on the inside. That is the light of glamour, of hollow fame. True light is different. It may be simple, unadorned, but it carries the weight of truth, capable of moving the depths of the soul and withstanding trials. King Herod summoned Jesus for questioning. The king, accustomed to luxury and power, wanted to see a spectacular miracle, a form of entertaining light. He asked many questions, but Jesus remained silent. An official whispered to Herod, "Your Majesty, there is nothing special about this man. There is no aura of light." Herod mocked, "You are called the light, so show me a little light." Jesus then looked directly at Herod and said, "True light is not a performance for the curious. It is truth, and the truth is standing before you. But your eyes, accustomed to the false lights of the palace, cannot recognize it." 15. Light is an invitation, not an imposition. The sun shines down on everyone, but people have the right to choose to stay in the shade or step out to receive it. Similarly, the light of the gospel is an invitation to freedom. God does not use his power to force anyone to believe. He only presents the truth and allows people to respond freely. A rich young man came to Jesus and asked how to gain eternal life. After hearing Jesus advise him to sell all his possessions and follow him, he went away sad. The apostles looked on with regret. The apostle Peter said, "Teacher, why didn't you use your power to convince him? He could have helped us so much." Jesus watched the young man's retreating figure and said, "Peter, I am the light to show the way, not a rope to drag people along. The door to the kingdom of heaven is never locked from the outside. I can only stand at the door and knock and invite. True love always respects freedom, even if the answer is a sad one." 16. True light does not deny its own darkness. A truly bright person is not someone who pretends to be perfect and flawless. On the contrary, it is someone who dares to look at the weaknesses, the dark areas in their own soul, and bring them into the light of mercy to be healed. Denying one's own darkness only creates a false and arrogant light. During a private prayer, the apostle Judas Iscariot said to Jesus, "Teacher, whenever I am near your holiness, I see more clearly the darkness in my heart. Greed, jealousy, I despise it and want to hide it." Jesus, in a sad and loving tone, replied, "Judas, even the brightest sun casts shadows on the ground. The issue is not whether you have darkness, for everyone does. The issue is what you do with it. Do you bring it into the light of mercy to be healed, or do you let it grow in secret until it consumes you? Do not be afraid of your darkness. Bring it to me." 17. Light has many different colors. White light, when passed through a prism, splits into 7 brilliant colors. Likewise, the one light of God, when shining on each person, refracts into countless different charisms, talents, and vocations. Do not be jealous or compare your light with others. Each color is necessary to create a perfect picture. The apostles argued among themselves about who was the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. One prided himself on his zeal, another boasted of his understanding. Jesus placed a child in their midst and said, "Peter's zeal is the color red. John's compassion is the color blue. Andrew's silent devotion is the color purple. Each of you reflects the Father's light in a unique way. Do not compare your colors. A rainbow would not be beautiful if it had only one color. Cherish your own calling and contribute to creating a complete rainbow for the kingdom of heaven." 18. Light can be a warning. Light is not always gentle. Like a lighthouse signaling to ships that there are hidden rocks, the light of truth must sometimes be strong and decisive to warn people of spiritual dangers, of paths that lead to destruction. This is also an expression of love. When Jesus saw the merchants turning the temple into a marketplace, he became angry and overturned their tables. The disciples were frightened by his decisiveness. The Apostle Matthew asked, "Teacher, your actions today are not like the gentle light you often speak of." Jesus, still breathing heavily, replied, "Matthew, when a house is on fire, the necessary light is not a romantic candlelight, but an alarm bell and a blazing fire to awaken everyone. My Father's house is being desecrated. My love for this place and for the people compels me to become a warning light. Silence in the face of wrongdoing is not meekness. It is complicity with darkness." 19. Persistent light will penetrate even stone. Water can wear away stone not because of its strength, but because of its persistence. Light is the same. A good deed, a prayer, a little hope may be considered weak against walls of prejudice and hatred as hard as stone. But if maintained persistently, that light will gradually seep in, soften, and eventually transform even the most hardened hearts. A Canaanite mother, a Gentile, kept following Jesus, begging him to heal her daughter. The apostles shooed her away, and even Jesus himself initially seemed cold. But the woman did not give up. She persisted in her plea with unshakable faith. Finally, Jesus smiled and said, "Woman, you have great faith." After she left, he turned to the apostles. "Do you see? The wall of prejudice between Jews and Gentiles is as hard as stone. But the light of this woman's persistent faith has pierced it. Never give up. Keep shining persistently, and every stone wall will eventually crumble." 20. The light of forgiveness heals both the giver and the receiver. Hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It is a darkness that imprisons us. The light of forgiveness not only frees the guilty party, but first and foremost, it frees and heals the forgiver, breaking down the prison of bitterness and resentment in their heart. While dying on the cross, amidst the mockery of the soldiers and the crowd, Jesus prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." One of the two thieves crucified with him, hearing this, turned and said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus looked at the thief and replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Jesus' prayer of forgiveness was not just empty words. It became a powerful stream of light, shining into the soul of the thief, transforming the final moments of his life from despair to hope, and healing the world from the venom of hatred. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 21. Light reveals the true value of all things. In the dark, a pebble and a diamond can look the same. Only when there is light is their true value distinguished. Similarly, the light of truth from God helps us to correctly perceive the value of everything in life, what is fleeting and what is eternal, what is a means and what is an end. Jesus was teaching near the temple treasury, watching the rich put their money into the offering box. Then he saw a poor widow put in only 2 small copper coins. He called his disciples to him and said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." Judas, the keeper of the money bag, wondered, "But teacher, what is the value of 2 copper coins compared to those silver talents?" Jesus replied, "In the darkness of worldly calculation, you see only the value of metal. But in the light of the kingdom of heaven, I see the value of sacrifice. The Father's light does not count quantity. It measures love. 22. The light of the present is the most precious gift. People often live in the darkness of the past with regrets, or in the darkness of the future with anxieties. This philosophy teaches that the true light of life can only be found in the present moment. Live fully, here and now, for it is the only place we can meet God. While preaching on the mountain, Jesus said, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." A person in the crowd asked, "Rabbi, but how can we not worry? The crops might fail, the Romans might raise taxes." Jesus pointed to the lilies of the field and said, "See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. The Father in heaven feeds them. Today's sunlight is nurturing them. They do not worry about tomorrow. They are simply blooming brilliantly in the light of today. You are much more valuable than lilies. Receive the light of the present. It is the gift the Father gives you." 23. The light of joy is a testimony. A sad Christian is a sad Christian. Deep joy, not superficial cheerfulness, is a powerful sign of God's presence in a person. That joy, even in the midst of trials, is a light that attracts others and makes them wonder, what makes this person so happy? After Jesus sent the 72 disciples out to preach, they returned with joyful exuberance. "Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name." Jesus shared their joy, but he elevated it to a new level. "However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." He taught them that the greatest joy, the most enduring light, comes not from success or power, but from an intimate relationship with God. That joy in itself is the most eloquent sermon about the kingdom of heaven. 24. Light needs eyes to be received. No matter how brilliant the sun is, a person with closed eyes will see nothing. Similarly, the light of truth and love is always given. But it requires from us an open heart, the eyes of faith, to be able to see and receive it. Sometimes, the problem is not a lack of light, but our refusal to open our eyes. When Jesus healed a blind man at Bethsaida, he did it gradually. He led him out of the village, spit on his eyes, and asked, "Do you see anything?" The man looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Then Jesus placed his hands on the man's eyes again, and he could see clearly and saw everything distinctly. The apostle Bartholomew asked, "Teacher, why didn't you heal him instantly?" Jesus replied, "Because his physical eyes needed to be healed slowly, just like the spiritual eyes of many people. Receiving the full light at once can be blinding and frightening. Sometimes, the Father must open our eyes little by little, so we can get used to the light and learn to see the world through his eyes." 25. Light is not only to illuminate, but also to warm. Truth without love can become a cold, scrutinizing, and judgmental light. The light of Jesus Christ is not just the light of reason, but also the light of the heart. It not only helps people see clearly, but also brings comfort, warmth, and a sense of being cherished. On a cold evening on a hillside, after teaching all day, the people were tired and hungry. The apostle Philip said, "Teacher, it is already dark and getting cold. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food and find lodging." Jesus looked at the shivering crowd, especially the children. He said to the apostles, The Father's word is not only light for their minds, but it must also be warmth for their hearts. A cold truth can make people shrink away, but a truth given in love will warm them. You give them something to eat. And then he performed the miracle of the multiplication of the loaves. This act not only fed their physical bodies, but was also a stream of warmth and love, a tangible light. 26. The light of humility is the true light. Natural light never boasts. The sun simply shines in silence. This philosophy teaches that when a person does good works to seek recognition and praise from others, that light has been clouded by the ego. True light is humble, doing good deeds in secret, seeking only the glory of God. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus taught, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret." A listener asked, "But teacher, you said before that our light must shine before others. Aren't these two things contradictory?" Jesus explained, "They are not contradictory. Your light must shine, meaning people see your good works, not you doing good works. They see the fragrant flowers and sweet fruit and praise the gardener, not the tree. Let your works themselves shine, while you yourself remain hidden in humility." 27. The light of creativity reflects the image of God. Genesis tells us that God's first words were, "Let there be light." The first creative act was to bring light into the world. Therefore, when people use their talents to create beauty, goodness, and usefulness, whether it's a work of art, a solution for the poor, a beautiful garden, they are participating in God's creative work and becoming light. Jesus, being the son of a carpenter, often observed his foster father Joseph at work. One day, a customer praised a table Joseph had just finished. "This table is perfect, not only sturdy, but also beautifully crafted." Jesus, then a boy, heard this and said to his father, "Father, when you turn a rough piece of wood into a useful and beautiful object, does it make you happy?" Joseph smiled and patted his son's head. "Yes, my son. Every time I create something good with my hands, I feel like I'm imitating a little of the work of our Father in heaven." Jesus understood that honest labor and creativity are also ways for God's light to be manifested through people. 28. The light of community is stronger than individual light. A single match can be easily blown out by the wind, but a bundle of torches burns fiercely and much more enduringly. This philosophy emphasizes the importance of community, of the church. When bright individuals gather, supporting, protecting, and encouraging one another, they create a massive stream of light capable of transforming society. After Jesus ascended, the apostles were fearful and hid in a room. They were just weak, individual sparks. But on the day of Pentecost, as they were praying together, the Holy Spirit descended on them like tongues of fire. Peter, who had once denied his teacher in fear, now boldly stepped out with the other apostles. He was no longer a solitary candle. He was part of a great force. His preaching, amplified by the power of the unified community, lit up the souls of thousands. They understood that Jesus did not call them to be lonely stars, but a brilliant constellation in the sky. 29. True light is not afraid to enter the darkest places. Many people want to keep their light in safe, clean places. But light is only truly needed where there is darkness. Therefore, the disciples of Jesus Christ are invited to courageously go into the peripheries of society, to the sick, the abandoned, the sinners, the desperate, to bring the light of hope and love to the very places that need it most. When Jesus went to dine at the house of a tax collector, the Pharisees whispered to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus heard this and replied, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." He added, as if to clarify further, "Do you light a lamp to put it in a bright living room, or to carry it into a dark cellar? Light is only valuable when it shines into a dark place. I am that light, and I must go where I am needed most." 30. Light will ultimately triumph over darkness. This is the foundational philosophy of Christian hope. The passion and death of Jesus Christ on the cross looked like the ultimate victory of darkness. But the resurrection on the third day proved the opposite. The light of life is stronger than the darkness of death. Although in life or in history, darkness may seem to prevail temporarily, the final and eternal victory always belongs to the light. On the morning of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb with a broken heart. The darkness of loss enveloped her. The empty tomb only added to her despair. But then, in the dim light of dawn, she met the risen one. Jesus called her name, Mary. In that instant, light truly dawned. Not just the sunlight, but the light of life that had conquered death. The darkness of Good Friday was dispelled by the brilliant dawn of Easter Sunday. Mary ran to tell the disciples, and her words became the core message, the final and most important philosophy. Do not be afraid. Darkness could not hold him. The light has won. Truly he is risen. He is. 31. The inner light determines the outer world. Jesus taught that the eye is the lamp of the body. This carries a deep philosophical meaning. The way we perceive the world shapes our reality. If the eye of our soul is clear, filled with love and gratitude, we will see beauty and goodness everywhere. If it is clouded by hatred, envy, and fear, the whole world will become a frightening place. Jesus and his disciples saw a Roman centurion giving orders to his soldiers. The apostle Simon, a zealot, looked at the officer with a resentful gaze and whispered, "Another oppressor of our people." But in another corner, a woman whose child had been given medicine by that same officer looked at him with gratitude. Jesus said to his disciples, "Look, the same person, but in Simon's eyes, he is the darkness of oppression. In the eyes of that mother, he is the light of unexpected kindness." The soldier did not change. What changed was the light in the eye of the beholder. Be careful of the light within you, for it colors the entire world. 32. The light of simplicity penetrates complexity. The world often values complex things, lofty theories, and elaborate rituals. But the light of truth is often surprisingly simple. A loving heart, a kind act, a truthful word. These are simple rays of light with the power to pierce through all the complex shells of intellectual pride and hypocrisy. Many scribes and Pharisees came to question Jesus about complex matters in the law of Moses. They argued about offerings, about the rules for observing the Sabbath, about ceremonial purity. They asked hundreds of confusing questions. Jesus listened to them all, then said just one simple sentence: "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Silence fell. The light from his simple answer rendered all their complex debates meaningless. He had pointed to the core, the essence, and that was all that truly mattered. 33. Light does not exclude, but embraces. Humans have a tendency to create their own circles, family, nation, religion, and to exclude those who are outside. The light of God is different. Like the air we breathe, it embraces all, without distinguishing between friend and foe, good and bad. To become like God is to learn to open our arms, to break down the walls of prejudice, to love even those who are not like us. The Apostle John enthusiastically told Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we told him to stop, because he was not one of us." Jesus looked at John, displeased. He said, "Do not stop him, for whoever is not against us is for us. Do not think that the Father's light is given only to our group. The wind blows wherever it pleases. If someone brings about goodness in my name, then the Father's light is at work through them, even if they are not in our boat. Do not try to possess the light. Rejoice when you see it shining, no matter where it comes from." 34. The light of patience nurtures growth. In a hurried world, we want everything to have immediate results. But in nature, the sunlight nurtures a seed slowly and patiently over days and months to become a great tree. Similarly, spiritual growth takes time. The light of patience, with oneself and with others, is a necessary condition for good things to blossom and bear fruit. Jesus told a parable. "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how." A farmer who heard this asked, "Rabbi, but I am very impatient. I want my plants to grow faster." Jesus replied, "My friend, you can impatiently shout at the seed, but it will not sprout any faster. You can only do your part, cultivate, water, and trust in the Father's sunlight and rain. Be patient. Every soul is like a seed. Give them the light of love and patience, and you will be surprised at the harvest the Father will bring." 35. Focused light has the power to burn. Sunlight, when spread out, is warm, but when focused through a lens, it can create fire. Similarly, our intentions, prayers, and actions, when scattered, have little effect. But when we focus our entire mind, heart, and strength on a good purpose, we create an intense spiritual heat capable of burning away obstacles, purifying what is evil, and igniting the flame of change. Jesus was sitting with his disciples, watching some children playing with a curved piece of glass. They realized that when they held the glass in the sun, the rays passing through it converged on a very hot point. A child used it to burn a dry leaf. Jesus called his disciples over and said, "Your prayers are like these rays of light. When you pray alone, each with a different intention, it is like scattered sunlight. But when you are all of one heart and mind, united in one intention in prayer, it is like the rays being focused. Its power can burn through even the coldest indifference and ignite the Father's fire in the most unexpected places." 36. The light of service is the highest light. The world honors those who are served by others, but the philosophy of Jesus Christ completely reverses this. The greatest person is not the one who sits on a high throne, but the one who stoops down to wash another's feet. The light of power is often blinding and distant, while the light of humble service warms and brings people together. During the Last Supper, a heavy atmosphere prevailed. Jesus stood up, took off his outer garment, took a towel, and began to wash the feet of each disciple. Peter vehemently objected, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus looked up, his gaze both gentle and firm. You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. That action was a sermon without words, a most brilliant light. It completely redefined greatness. Greatness is service. 37. The light of hope can sprout from ashes. Hope is not the superficial optimism that everything will be okay. Hope is the deep conviction that even in failure, loss, and the ashes of life, God can bring forth new life. Like some trees that only grow back after a forest fire, the light of hope often shines brightest from the very darkness of despair. After Jesus died, the disciples were scattered. Their dreams had turned to dust. They hid in fear, thinking everything was over. It was the ultimate darkness. But from the very tomb, from the place of death and ashes, the light of the resurrection dawned. Jesus appeared to them, not to erase the memory of the cross, but to show that from that very cross a new life had begun. He said to them, "Peace be with you." Those words were not just a greeting, but a proclamation. From the ashes of Good Friday, the flame of hope had been relit, brighter than ever. 38. Light is not to be possessed, but to be spread. Humans have a tendency to hoard, hoarding wealth, knowledge, even grace. We want to keep the light for ourselves or for our group. This philosophy teaches that light is like good news. Its value lies in being spread. To keep it for oneself is like hiding a cure for a disease. It is a selfish act that goes against the very nature of light. After the multiplication of the loaves, the people wanted to make Jesus king. They wanted to possess him, to keep him as their own king who could provide bread and miracles. But Jesus withdrew to a mountain by himself. The next morning, he went to another region. The disciples found him and said, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." He taught them that the light he brought was not the private property of one group, but must be spread to every corner of the world. 39. The light of truth demands transformation, not just agreement. Many people hear a truth, nod in agreement, and then continue to live as before. The light of truth, according to Jesus, is not information to be known, but a power to transform. It demands that we change our way of living, thinking, and acting. If light does not lead to change, it is just an illusion. Jesus told the parable of the two sons. The father told both to go and work in the vineyard. The first said, "Yes, sir," but did not go. The second said, "I will not." But later he changed his mind and went. Jesus asked, "Which of the two did what his father wanted?" The crowd answered correctly, but Jesus applied it to them. "Truly I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are entering the kingdom of God ahead of you." Because those sinners, when they heard the call, truly changed, like the second son. But those who considered themselves righteous, they nodded in agreement with the law, like the first son. But their hearts and lives were not transformed at all. Light is only valuable when it makes you move. 40. Light shines from weakness. The world believes that strength comes from power, from invulnerability. But the philosophy of the cross shows the opposite. The power and light of God are often most fully revealed through human weakness, fragility, and vulnerability. A cracked clay jar can let the light inside shine out. Many years after Jesus ascended, the Apostle Paul, in one of his letters, wrote about a thorn in his flesh, some weakness that caused him to suffer. He pleaded with the Lord 3 times to take it away, but he heard an answer from within his soul, an echo of his teacher's philosophy. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul understood. He no longer hid or was ashamed of his weakness. He wrote, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." His greatest light came not from his talent, but from the very place where he was fragile and dependent on God. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 41. Be a light, not a judge. One of the greatest temptations when we think we have light, truth, righteousness, is to use it as a stick to judge others. The function of light is to illuminate, not to condemn. A doctor uses light to diagnose a wound and heal it, not to criticize the patient. Similarly, our light is to help others see the way, not to point out their faults arrogantly. The Pharisees often criticized Jesus' disciples because they did not wash their hands according to tradition before eating. They saw it as proof of impurity. Jesus called them over and said, "You hypocrites, you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them." He taught that they were using the light of the law incorrectly. Instead of using it to illuminate and purify their own souls, they used it as a flashlight to scrutinize and judge the minor details of others, while the darkness of pride still reigned in their hearts. 42. Become transparent, not an obstacle to light. There is a difference between being a mirror and a pane of glass. A mirror, the ego, reflects light back to make itself stand out. A transparent pane of glass lets light pass through, illuminating what is behind it. The disciple is called to become transparent, to set aside the ego, personal intentions, so that the light of God can shine through them in its purest form to others. John the Baptist was attracting a large crowd by the Jordan River. His disciples became worried when they saw the people starting to follow Jesus. They said to John, "Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, he is baptizing, and everyone is going to him." John, in a moment of wonderful transparency, replied, "He must become greater, I must become less." He did not see himself as the lamp, but only as a voice crying in the wilderness. He was not a mirror wanting to keep the light for himself, but a transparent pane of glass, pointing towards the true light and letting that light pass through him completely. 43. The light of silence nurtures the soul. The world is full of noise, distraction, and busyness. We constantly run from one thing to another in a harsh, artificial light. This philosophy teaches the importance of withdrawing into silence. Just as the eyes need darkness to rest, the soul needs silence to be able to see the inner light and hear the voice of God. The Gospels repeatedly record, Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. After days of teaching and healing thousands amidst the praise and demands of the crowds, he always sought silence. Once the disciples found him on a mountain at dawn. Peter said, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus pointed to the rising sun and said, Before this sun brings light to the world, it passes through the silence of the night. Our souls are the same. Before we can bring light to others, we must find it for ourselves in silence before the Father. Otherwise, we will soon be depleted and left with only noise. 44. The light of a question is more valuable than a ready-made answer. Jesus often answered a question with another question. He did this not to evade, but to invite the questioner on a journey of discovery. A ready-made answer can satisfy the intellect, but a profound question will light a fire in the hearer's own soul, causing them to search and grow on their own. A scribe came and asked Jesus, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" This was a question seeking a formula, a ready-made answer. Jesus did not provide a to-do list. He asked back, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" After the scribe answered correctly, he asked again, "And who is my neighbor?" Instead of defining it, Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan and then ended with another question. Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The light was lit, not by an answer, but by a story and a question that forced the scribe to draw his own conclusion and face the truth. 45. The light of trust dispels the darkness of anxiety. Anxiety is a thick darkness. It makes the future seem terrifying and the present heavy. The philosophy of trust, or surrender, is a powerful stream of light. It does not deny difficulties, but it believes that a greater love is watching over and caring for us. This trust frees us from the burden of having to control everything. When the disciples were in a boat with Jesus, a great storm arose. The waves beat into the boat, and they were terrified. Meanwhile, Jesus was sleeping. They woke him up and cried out, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Jesus got up, rebuked the wind and the waves. Then he turned to the disciples, not to scold them, but to light a light. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" He pointed out that the real darkness was not the storm outside, but the darkness of fear and lack of trust inside them. The light of trust in his presence could bring peace even in the midst of the greatest storm. 46. Every step is a ray of light. We often want to see the whole path, a detailed map for the future. But God's light usually doesn't work that way. Like a person holding a lamp in the night, the light is only enough to illuminate the next few steps. This philosophy invites us to trust and bravely take the next step in the light we have, instead of being paralyzed by not seeing the enter journey. When Abraham was called by God, he was commanded, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." The promise of a land was a distant light, but the path was completely obscure. When Jesus called his first disciples, the fishermen, he simply said, "Follow me." He did not give them a 5-year plan, nor did he explain the details of the cross or the resurrection. He only gave an invitation, a ray of light for the very next step. The light of faith is believing that when you take one step, the light will automatically move and illuminate the next. 47. The light of truth can cause division. This is a difficult and confusing philosophy to hear. We often think that light only brings harmony. But Jesus said, "I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." The light of truth, when it shines into a family or a society accustomed to living in the darkness of compromise and falsehood, will force each person to choose. This choice can cause painful division among loved ones. A family had a son who decided to follow Jesus. His parents, who were devout followers of the law in the traditional way, were furious. The father said, "You are following a rebel who turns everything upside down. You must choose, either this family or that teacher, Jesus." The son was distressed, but he felt the light of truth in Jesus' teachings. He replied to his father, "I love you, my parents, but I must love the truth more." Division occurred. The light had forced a line to be drawn, not because the light wanted to, but because the darkness could not tolerate its presence. 48. Do not confuse the lamps of the world with the light of day. The world offers many types of artificial light: fame, power, wealth, ideologies. They can look very attractive and brilliant in the dark night of insecurity. But they are limited, they need fuel to burn, and they cannot compare to the vast, natural, life-giving sunlight of God. Do not build your life under a flickering lamp when you can live in the light of day. Many years later, when the Apostle Paul arrived in Athens, he saw the city at night lit by countless torches and oil lamps, illuminating magnificent temples and statues of gods. Standing before the Areopagus Council, amidst the artificial lights of Greek philosophy and mythology, Paul, filled with the light of Christ, said, "The God who made the world and everything in it does not live in temples built by human hands." He contrasted the sparkling but limited lamps of man with the true light, the Creator, the source of the sun itself. 49. The light of blessing has the power to transform reality. Cursing is the act of calling darkness upon a person or thing. Blessing is the opposite act, calling the light of God to come. Jesus taught, "Bless those who curse you." This is not a hollow moral act. Blessing is a powerful spiritual act that frees us from the cycle of hatred and has the real ability to transform the atmosphere around us, sowing seeds of light in the driest soil. When the crowd insulted and crucified Jesus, his first words on the cross were not a curse, but a blessing and a plea for forgiveness. "Father, forgive them." This blessing, uttered from the darkest place of pain and injustice, became a light of terrifying power. It touched the heart of the Roman centurion, causing him to exclaim, "Surely this man was the Son of God." It opened the gates of the kingdom of heaven for the good thief. The light of blessing triumphed on the very hill of darkness. 50. Your light is your legacy. In the end, when life is over, what we leave behind is not wealth, position, or fame. The true legacy of a person is the sum of the rays of light they have shone into the lives of others, acts of kindness, words of comfort, moments of forgiveness, instances of inspiration. These are the small flames you have lit in other souls, and they will continue to burn and spread long after you are gone. At the Last Supper, after teaching his disciples, Jesus knew his hour had come. He did not leave them gold or worldly power. His legacy was himself, encapsulated in a piece of bread, a cup of wine, and a new commandment. He said, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." That love is the light. His legacy was not an object, but a flame passed from heart to heart. And he invites each of us, live in such a way that when you depart, the legacy you leave behind is also a trail of love's light in this world. 51. Contemplate the light. Don't stare at the sun. We can enjoy the warmth and light of the sun, but no one can stare directly at it without being blinded. Similarly, we can experience the love, wisdom, and mercy of God, which is the light. But his absolute essence is a mystery beyond human intellect. Trying to fully analyze and understand God with reason is like looking directly at the sun. We are invited to live in His light, not to analyze its source. When the Apostle Philip said to Jesus, "Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us," Jesus patiently replied, "Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." Many years later, when the Apostle John, now old, reflected to write his Gospel, he understood the depth of that statement. He realized Jesus did not mean he and the Father were one in a mathematical sense. Rather, he was the light through which the nature of the Father was revealed. To experience the love of Jesus is to experience the love of the Father. We cannot see the Father as an object, just as we cannot stare at the sun. But we can see and feel the light that emanates from Him. 52. The light of truth has no weight, but its burden is immense. A ray of light has no mass. We cannot weigh it. But its absence or presence creates an enormous psychological and spiritual weight. A clear conscience, illuminated by the light of truth, is light and serene. Conversely, a sinful secret hidden in darkness weighs on the soul like a boulder. Zacchaeus, after the light of Jesus' presence shone into his house and his heart, stood up and declared, "I will give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." After Jesus left, an old friend of Zacchaeus asked him, "Why did you do that? You've lost a fortune." Zacchaeus smiled, a truly serene smile for the first time in years. He replied, "My friend, I have lost wealth, but I have shed a burden heavier than gold and silver, the burden of darkness. You wouldn't know, but the light of truth weighs nothing. Yet it has made my soul as light as a feather." 53. Light leaves a trace even after it's gone. When you look at a flame and then close your eyes, the image of the flame remains on your retina for a moment. Similarly, an act of love, a kind word, a compassionate presence will leave a bright after-image in the minds and memories of others, continuing to warm and guide them long after the act is over. A leper was healed by Jesus. After Jesus had gone, he still sat there, touching his now healed skin. The villagers, who had previously shunned him, now came closer out of curiosity. One asked, "What did he do?" The leper didn't just talk about the miracle. He closed his eyes and said, "I don't just remember my skin being healed. I remember his eyes. While the whole world looked at me with disgust, he looked at me like a human being. That look, that light, he is gone now, but it still burns brightly right here." He pointed to his heart. 54. The light of creativity enriches the world. Light is not just a moral concept. It is also the energy of creation. Every time a person uses their talent to create something new and good, a song, a painting, a chair, a delicious meal, a solution for the community, they are participating in God's creative act, pushing back the darkness of chaos, stagnation, and meaninglessness. Jesus, during his youth working with his foster father Joseph, learned this philosophy. One day, they repaired a broken plow for a poor farmer. Joseph didn't just fix it to be functional. He took extra time to carve a small ear of wheat on the handle. Jesus asked, "Father, why did you do that? The man isn't paying extra for the carving." Joseph stopped, wiped his sweat, and said, "Son, making it work is the job. Adding a bit of beauty is the joy. God didn't just create rocks and dirt. He also created flowers and stars. When we add a little beauty to our work, we bring a little more of the Creator's light into the world." 55. Darkness is the absence of light. not an opposing force. We often personify darkness, viewing it as an active, powerful force. But from a deeper perspective, darkness has no substance of its own. It is simply the state of lacking light. You cannot drive out darkness by beating it. You just need to bring in light, and the darkness will automatically disappear. Don't focus too much on fighting sin. Focus on bringing Christ into your life. A child in the village was afraid of the dark in his room every night. His mother tried many things, explaining, comforting, even scolding. But the child remained afraid. One day, Jesus passed by. The mother told him the story. Jesus smiled, saying nothing to the child about monsters or ghosts. He simply gave him a small oil lamp and said, "Here, son, hold on to this lamp. Where you are, it will be." That night, the child took the lamp into his room. He no longer had to fight the darkness. Simply, wherever he went, the darkness retreated. He learned an important lesson. Don't curse the darkness. Light a candle. 56. Light is the best disinfectant for a community. Sin, corruption, and wrongdoing often thrive in secret, in the darkness of concealment. When these behaviors are brought into the light of truth, transparency, and accountability, they begin to lose their power. A healthy community is not one without problems, but one that is not afraid to let the light shine on its problems to heal them. Jesus told a short parable. There were 2 grain merchants. The first kept his grain in a dark, damp cellar and locked the door. Soon, mold and rats ruined most of the grain. The second, every morning, threw open the windows of his warehouse to let in the sun and wind. Although a few grains were spoiled, the sunlight prevented the mold from spreading, and the wind blew away the chaff. The kingdom of heaven is the same. A community that hides its sins will rot from within. A community that dares to live in the light of truth will be purified and become strong. 57. The light of holy playfulness. We often associate light with serious things: truth, justice, morality. But we forget that pure laughter, holy playfulness, is also a brilliant form of light. It has the power to dispel the darkness of sorrow, stress, and taking everything too seriously. Humor and joy are signs of a free and trusting soul. Jesus was playing with a group of children in the village. He played hide and seek with them, and his laughter rang out as clearly as the children's. A Pharisee passed by, saw this, and shook his head, saying to his disciple, "Look, a teacher behaving like a child. How undignified!" The Apostle Peter heard this and felt a bit confused. Later he asked Jesus about it. Jesus replied, "Peter, have you ever seen the sun scowl while it shines? No, it simply radiates. Pure joy is also a radiance of the kingdom of heaven. Whoever does not receive the kingdom of heaven with the heart of a child, a heart that knows how to trust, to play, and not to worry too much about one's own dignity, will not enter it." 58. Light makes plants turn towards the source. In nature, there is a phenomenon called phototropism, where plants always tend to grow towards the light. The human soul is the same. Deep within each of us, there is a natural urge, a spiritual tropism, a longing to reach for the true light, which is God. Sin and worldly concerns can misdirect it, but that longing is never completely lost. Jesus was walking past an old stone wall. From a small crack, a blade of wild grass was struggling to grow, bending awkwardly towards the sunlight. He stopped, showed it to his disciples, and said, "The life in this blade of grass teaches you a great lesson. Though crushed by stones, Though growing in a dark place, it never stops seeking the light. The human soul is the same. Though weighed down by sin or suffering, it always longs to reach for my Father. Your task is not to pull people, but to be the light, so that the natural longing within them has a direction to grow towards. 59. Light is not the destination, but the path. Many people view light or truth as a treasure to be possessed, a final destination. But Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Light is not a static place, but a dynamic journey. To live in the light is to continuously walk, to continuously discover, to continuously grow, not to sit still after having found it. After Jesus said, "I am the way," the Apostle Thomas, a practical thinker, asked, "Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way?" Jesus did not answer by describing a location. He pointed to the very relationship between him and them. "Remain in me, as I also remain in you." The lesson here is, the path is not a pre-drawn map on paper. The path is the act of walking each day with the light. Every step taken in love, in forgiveness, in service. That is the path. The destination is not separate from the journey. 60. The light of a story has greater transformative power than a command. A command can change external behavior, but a good story can change the heart. Jesus was a master storyteller. He knew that when a truth is wrapped in a story, it bypasses the defensive barriers of reason and goes straight into the imagination and soul, igniting the light of understanding from within. Instead of commanding, "You must forgive one another," Jesus told the parable of the unforgiving servant. Instead of commanding, "Love people of other races," he told the story of the Good Samaritan. Instead of commanding, "Do not be proud," he told the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector praying in the temple. Once a scribe asked him, "Why don't you speak plainly? Why must you always use parables?" Jesus replied, "If I give you a diamond, you can take it or refuse it. But if I tell you about a hidden treasure, your heart itself will urge you to go find it. A story is a seed of light. I sow it in your souls, and it will grow on its own, transforming you from the inside without you even knowing it." Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 61. The light of presence is more than help. When faced with another's pain, our first reflex is to do something, to offer solutions, to try to fix it. But sometimes, the most needed thing is not an action, but presence. Simply being there, sitting with them, sharing the silence, letting the other person know they are not alone in their darkness. That is a subtle but incredibly powerful light. When Job lost everything, his 3 friends came to him. This is not from the Gospels of Jesus, but illustrates this philosophy perfectly. The best thing they did was not their later philosophical speeches. The best thing was what they did at the very beginning. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him, because they saw how great his suffering was. Their silent presence during that first week was the brightest light they could offer Job in his despair. 62. Light does not eliminate darkness, but gives it meaning. We often hope that by following God, our lives will be free from suffering, sickness, and loss, darkness. But the philosophy of the cross is different. God's light does not erase darkness, but enters into the midst of darkness and transforms it. The cross, a symbol of extreme suffering, has become a symbol of love and victory. Light gives meaning to darkness, transforming it from a meaningless event into part of a larger story of salvation. When Jesus foretold his passion, Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said. "This shall never happen to you." Peter wanted a light without darkness, but Jesus rebuked him. "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." He taught that the path of light is not the path that avoids the cross, but the path that goes through it. True light is strong enough to embrace darkness and transform it into something redemptive. 63. Light passing through each person creates a unique shade. The white light of the sun is one, but when it passes through a prism or raindrops, it forms a rainbow of 7 colors. Similarly, the light of God is one, but he does not create identical people. When that light shines through the prism of each person's unique personality, culture, and life experience, it creates an infinite spectrum of holiness, each with its own unique beauty. Jesus and his disciples passed by a garden where there were countless different kinds of flowers: red roses, white lilies, purple irises, all turning towards the same sun. He said, "There is only one sun, but it does not force the rose to become a lily to receive its light. Each flower receives the same light and uses it to bloom in its own unique beauty. It is the same in my Father's garden. Do not try to make others into copies of yourselves. Let them receive the light and blossom in the way the Father intended for them." 64. The light of gratitude is the door to miracles. Miracles often don't happen to those who only complain and demand. They often begin with an act of gratitude for the little one has. Gratitude is an act of opening the heart, a way of acknowledging that everything is a gift. It is this attitude that will ignite a light that attracts the grace of God. Before performing the miracle of the multiplication of the loaves, Jesus had only 5 loaves and 2 fish in his hands, a quantity far too small for a crowd of thousands. The natural human reaction is to complain about the lack. But what did Jesus do? He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. The act of giving thanks for what was little was the light that opened the way for the great miracle. He teaches us not to look at what we lack, but to start by giving thanks for what we have, however small, and that will be where the miracle begins. 65. The light of sacred rest. In the law, the Sabbath was a sacred day of rest, a day for God. The philosophy behind it is that humans are not machines that work endlessly. We need rest to regenerate physically and spiritually. The light of intentional rest helps us remember that the world continues to function without our constant control, and that we are creatures, not the Creator. When the Pharisees criticized the disciples for plucking grain on the Sabbath, Jesus defended them by recalling the story of King David. Then he declared a revolutionary truth. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. He did not abolish rest, but put it in its proper place. It is not a burden of the law, but a gift, a light of liberation and healing, a space for the soul to breathe and reconnect with the source of life. 66. The light of a question can change a lifetime. Sometimes the right question asked at the right time has more power than a sermon. A question can break down prejudices, open new horizons, and begin a journey of truth-seeking. Jesus often used questions as a tool to illuminate. After Jesus healed the man born blind, the Pharisees questioned him. They didn't believe. Finally, Jesus found him again and asked a single question, a question that would forever change his life. Do you believe in the Son of Man? That question was not a survey. It was an invitation, a direct ray of light. It forced him to look back on his entire experience and make a decision of faith. His answer, "Lord, I believe," was not just the acknowledgement of a miracle, but the beginning of a new life in the light. 67. The light of surrender makes the shoulders light. Jesus invites, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." What is that burden? It is the burden of sin, of anxiety, of trying to save oneself. The light of surrender is the courageous act of casting off those burdens and placing them on His shoulders, trusting that He is strong enough to carry them. Martha was busy with many things while Mary just sat at Jesus' feet and listened. Martha came to complain. Jesus did not criticize Martha's service, but He pointed out the burden she was placing on herself. He said, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." What was that better part? It was the light of presence, of listening, of realizing that the most important thing is not what I do for God, but what I let God do for me. That is surrender. 68. The light of truth makes you free. We are often imprisoned in invisible prisons, the prison of prejudice, of bad habits, of lying to ourselves and others. Jesus declared, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." The light of truth, though it may be painful at first as it exposes reality, will ultimately break those chains and bring true freedom. Jesus was speaking to a group of Jews who had believed in Him. He spoke to them about freedom. They answered Him defensively, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone." They were thinking of political slavery. But Jesus was talking about a deeper kind of slavery. He replied, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin." He showed them that the real prison was within their hearts. And the key to escape was not a rebellion with swords, but receiving the light of truth about themselves and about Him, the one who could free them from those chains. 69. Light is not a feeling, but a decision. Many people seek light as an emotional state, a warm feeling, a surge of joy. Those feelings are gifts, but they are not the essence of light. The essence of light is a decision of the will. The decision to love when you feel hate. The decision to forgive when you feel bitter. The decision to hope when you feel despair. It is an action, not a feeling. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus experienced extreme agony. His emotions were fear and sorrow to the point of death. There was not a single feeling of light. He prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me." That was emotion. But then His will made a decision. "Yet not as I will, but as you will." That moment, in the thickest darkness of the soul, was when His light shone most brightly. It was not the light of emotion, but the brilliant light of obedience and love, a decision that changed all of history. 70. There will be a day when light no longer comes from the sun. This is the ultimate philosophy, the final hope for all who walk in the light. All our experiences of light in this world, the sun, a candle, a good deed, are just shadows, foreshadowings. The book of Revelation describes a new heaven and a new earth, a Jerusalem that does not need the sun or the moon, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The final destination of the journey is to live completely within the source of light itself, where there is no more darkness, no more separation, no more tears. In his vision on the island of Patmos, the Apostle John was shown this final prospect. After witnessing so many calamities, wars, and darkness, he was shown a completely different reality. An angel showed him the holy city and told him about the Lamb being its lamp. John, who had once leaned his head on Jesus' breast at the Last Supper, now understood. The entire life of Jesus, the entire call to be the light of the world, was a preparation for this moment. It was the promise that the journey of walking in the light is not a hopeless effort, but the path that leads home, to the very heart of the eternal light. The journey ends. They have come home in the light. 71. Light creates ripples that spread. An act of kindness rarely stops at itself. Like a pebble thrown into a calm lake, a ray of loving light will create ripples that spread, touching lives we may never know about. The person who receives help today may be the one who helps someone else tomorrow. Never underestimate the spreading power of a small flame. Years later, when the Apostle Peter was in Joppa, he remembered his teacher's words. He observed a disciple named Tabitha. She did not perform great miracles. She quietly used her light to sew robes for poor widows. Peter realized that those widows, feeling loved, in turn cared for the orphans in the city. And those orphans, feeling loved for the first time, shared their meager bread with stray dogs. Peter smiled. The small light from Tabitha's needle had created a warm wave that spread throughout the community. 72. The light of memory shapes the present. The past is not just what is over. How we illuminate our memories determines who we are today. We can choose to use the light of bitterness to shine on our wounds, or the light of gratitude to shine on our blessings. Shining the light of forgiveness on the past will liberate our present. At the Last Supper, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Remembrance here is not a sad recollection. It is an act of bringing the light of sacrifice and love from the past directly into the present, so that it becomes Alev and gives strength. Every time the disciples repeated this act, they were not just remembering an event. They were letting the light of that event reshape and nourish them in the present moment. 73. The light of obedience frees from the burden of choice. The modern world elevates freedom of choice to the point where it becomes a burden. We have to choose everything, and we always fear choosing wrong. The light of obedience to God's will is not blind slavery, but liberation. When we trust and walk the path He shows, we are freed from the paralysis of 1,000 choices and find peace in a single path. When the angel appeared to the Virgin Mary, she was presented with a choice that would change all of history. She could have analyzed, feared, and refused. But she responded with complete obedience. "I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled." In that moment, she did not lose her freedom. On the contrary, she reached the highest freedom. Freedom from the ego, from fear, and complete harmony with the light of the divine will. That yes threw open the door for the light to enter the world. 74. Light is not always comfortable. We prefer a warm, gentle light. But sometimes the light of truth is like a doctor's lamp, shining directly on our wounds. It can be painful, uncomfortable, and reveal things we want to hide. But that discomfort is necessary for healing. Avoiding this light is like letting a wound become infected in the dark. When the Samaritan woman met Jesus at the well, the conversation was initially very casual. But then Jesus said directly, "You have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband." This statement was like a blinding, uncomfortable ray of light. It exposed the truth the woman had tried to hide. But it was this uncomfortable ray of light that broke down her defensive wall, paving the way for a truthful dialogue and leading her to the living water. 75. True light smells of the sheep. A true shepherd cannot sit in a clean place and command the flock. He must be among them, go into muddy places, and endure their smell. Similarly, the light of a disciple cannot be a distant, sterile light. It must be engaged, close to the pain, the weakness, and even the unpleasant smells of humanity. A light that is too clean is often a light without love. Jesus was often criticized for being close to those considered unclean by society. He touched lepers, ate with tax collectors. The Pharisees, who kept themselves clean, could not understand. They asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher do that?" If answered in modern language, Jesus might have said, "Because I am the good shepherd, and a good shepherd must carry the smell of the sheep. My light is not to be admired from a distance, but to warm the sheep who are lost and cold. To do that, I must be near them." 75. True light smells of the sheep. A true shepherd cannot sit in a clean place and command the flock. He must be among them, go into muddy places, and endure their smell. Similarly, the light of a disciple cannot be a distant, sterile light. It must be engaged, must be close to the pain, the weakness, and even the unpleasant smells of humanity. A light that is too clean is often a light without love. Jesus was often criticized for being close to those considered unclean by society. He touched lepers and ate with tax collectors. The Pharisees, who kept themselves clean, could not understand. They asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher do that?" If answered in modern language, Jesus might have said, "Because I am the good shepherd, and a good shepherd must carry the smell of the sheep. My light is not to be admired from a distance, but to warm the sheep who are lost and cold. To do that, I must be near them." 76. Your darkness shows you where the light is. We often hate and want to cut off our shadow, our flaws, weaknesses, and sins. But remember, a shadow can only exist when there is a light source. Instead of despairing over your shadow, try turning to look. The shadow will show you exactly which direction the light source is in. Your weakness is not the end. It is an arrow pointing to where you need to go, to the mercy of God. Jesus told a parable. A man was lost in the desert at noon. The sun was directly overhead, and his shadow nearly vanished. He felt exposed and completely disoriented. But as the sun began to set, a long shadow stretched out before him. At first he hated it, seeing it as his own darkness. But then he realized a truth. The shadow was pointing directly east, meaning the sun was in the west. To find his way home, he just needed to walk in the opposite direction of his shadow. It was his own darkness that showed him the way out of the desert. 77. The light of forgiveness liberates the forgiver first. Holding on to resentment is like picking up a hot coal to throw at someone else. You are the one who gets burned first. Unforgiveness is a dark prison we lock ourselves in. The light of the act of forgiveness, before it shines on the offender, first breaks down the walls of that prison and liberates the forgiver's own soul from the burden of bitterness. When Peter asked Jesus if forgiving 7 times was enough, Jesus told the parable of the servant who was forgiven a huge debt by the king, but refused to forgive his fellow servant a small debt. As a result, he was thrown into prison. That prison was not just a punishment from the king. It was the exact image of the state of his soul. By refusing to forgive, he had locked himself in the dark prison of pettiness and bitterness, unable to enjoy the light of freedom the king had granted him. 78. The light of sacred order. Genesis tells us that the world began in chaos, formless and empty. The light of God is not just illumination, but also the act of putting everything in its proper place, creating order and harmony. In spiritual life as well, the light of God helps us to rearrange our priorities, to place God at the center, and to let everything else fall into its proper place, bringing peace instead of inner turmoil. When Jesus called his disciples, he brought a new order to their lives. Before, their priorities were boats, nets, and fish. That was a good order, but not the highest order. The call, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men," was a ray of light that brought a new order. He did not tell them to discard everything, but to place them in a larger context. The boats and nets were no longer the end, but became the means. The light of their vocation rearranged their entire universe, and in that new order, they found true meaning. 79. Light is not the absence of doubt, but action in the midst of doubt. Many people think that strong faith means never having doubts, but even the greatest figures had moments of uncertainty. The light of faith is not a state of absolute intellectual certainty, but the courage to act, to walk, to trust even when clouds of doubt remain in the heart. John the Baptist, who had once powerfully introduced Jesus, experienced a crisis of faith while in prison. He sent his disciples to ask Jesus, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus did not rebuke John for his doubt. He pointed to the fruits. "Go back and report to John what you have seen and heard." The lesson here is that even a lamp as bright as John's could flicker at times, but his light was not found in his unshakable certainty, but in the fact that even in his doubt, he still acted. He still sought the answer from Jesus. 80. The light of hospitality can open the door to angels. Hospitality is a concrete act of light. When we open our homes, our tables, our hearts to a stranger, we are pushing back the darkness of fear, suspicion, and selfishness. The letter to the Hebrews reminds us, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. On the road to Emmaus, 2 disciples, though they had not yet recognized Jesus, urged him as evening approached. "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." This simple act of hospitality, inviting a stranger into their home, was the decisive moment. It was in the space of hospitality at the table that their eyes were opened and they recognized him. The light of hospitality had opened the door to the greatest divine encounter of their lives. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 81. Light reveals beauty, not just truth. Light does not only function to expose or to guide. it also has the function of revealing beauty. A flower in the dark is just a shape, but in the sunlight, its colors and delicate lines burst forth. The light of God is the same. It helps us to see the sacred beauty hidden in every person and in all creation, a beauty that the darkness of haste and judgment often conceals. Jesus often used images from nature to teach. He spoke of the lilies of the field, that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. While others looked at a lily and saw only a weed, the light in Jesus' eyes saw a beauty that surpassed all human magnificence. He invites us to have a contemplative gaze, to use the light of our souls to discover and enjoy the beauty that God has scattered everywhere, especially the beauty in small and simple people. 82. Light is a transmitted flame, not an invention. Every generation is tempted to think it must reinvent faith, reinvent truth. This philosophy teaches humility. We are not the first to walk this path. We are part of a great relay race, honored to receive the torch of faith, light, from those who came before and charged with the sacred duty to keep it burning and pass it on to those who come after. In his letter to his young disciple Timothy, the Apostle Paul, now old, did not tell Timothy to create a new doctrine. Instead, he wrote, "Hold on to the pattern of sound teaching that you have heard from me. Guard the good deposit that was entrusted to you. Guard it with the help of the Holy Spirit who lives in us." Paul did not see himself as an inventor, but as a link in a chain, passing on the good deposit, the light of faith he himself had received, to the next generation. 83. The light of letting go creates space for the new. A clenched fist cannot receive anything. Similarly, a soul that clings to the past, to hurts, to old ideas, will have no space for the new light of God to shine in. Letting go is not loss, but the act of clearing out and opening the soul to receive the greater things God wants to give. Jesus said, "Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined." This parable is not just about wine and wineskins. The old wineskin is the fixed mindset, the rigid laws, the unchangeable prejudices. The new wine is the light of the gospel, full of life and dynamism. To receive the new light of Jesus, the disciples and all of us must be willing to let go of the old wineskins that have become hardened in our souls. 884. True light is steady, not flickering. The light of emotion goes up and down. The light of public opinion changes with the wind. But the light of truth is as steadfast as the North Star, a firm anchor for sailors in the dark night. A person living in this light has an inner peace and stability that is not easily shaken by the turmoil of external circumstances. When the crowd cheered for Jesus as he entered Jerusalem, they waved branches and shouted, "Hosanna!" But just a few days later, the same crowd screamed, "Crucify him!" Their light was the light of emotion, of temporary benefit, so it was extremely fickle. In contrast, Jesus remained steadfast. He was not overly joyful when praised, nor despairing when rejected. He knew who he was and what his mission was. The light within him did not depend on the world's acceptance. It was a steady light, emanating from his absolute union with the Father. 85. The light of silence is more eloquent than words. When faced with false accusations, our instinct is to defend ourselves. In the face of ignorance, we want to argue. But there are times when dignified silence is the most powerful response. It is the light of a peaceful soul, confident in the truth and needing no verbal self-justification. When Jesus was brought before Pilate, he was accused of all sorts of things. But the Bible records, "But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge," to the great amazement of the governor. Jesus' silence was not weakness or helplessness. It was the silence of a king. It was more eloquent than any defense. It exposed the emptiness and absurdity of the accusations. That light of silence confounded the powerful Roman governor and made him question himself. 86. The light of God's word is a lamp for our feet. Psalm 119 says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path." This means that the word of God is not just a text to be studied, but a living and practical source of light. When faced with a decision or a difficulty, meditating on God's word will illuminate the next step for us to take in accordance with His will. After Jesus ascended into heaven, the apostles faced their first community decision, choosing a replacement for Judas. They did not vote according to their own opinions or argue. The Bible records that they nominated 2 men, then they prayed and cast lots. But before that, Peter stood up and quoted the Psalms to explain the necessity of this action. They allowed the light of God's word to shine on their current situation, and from there, they made their decision in prayer. 87. The light of conversion is an inner dawn. Conversion is not just regretting a wrongdoing. It is a 180-degree turnaround, a fundamental change in mindset and direction. It is like a person walking west into the darkness of sunset, who suddenly turns around and walks east, facing the breaking dawn. It is a transition from darkness to light. Paul, then known as Saul, was breathing out murderous threats against the Christians as he went to Damascus. He fully believed he was walking in the light of the law. But on the road, a light from heaven flashed around him and struck him down. That light blinded his physical eyes, but opened the eyes of his soul. That fall was the moment of conversion. The entire direction of his life changed. He experienced an inner dawn, and from being a hunter of the light, he became one of its brightest torches. 88. Light is not just for humans. Humans are often arrogant, thinking they are the center of the universe. But the light of God shines on all of creation. His love encompasses the sparrows, the lilies, the animals, and this very earth. Realizing this gives us a humble perspective and a greater responsibility to care for the common home that God has created. Jesus taught, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God." This statement, though simple, is a revolutionary eye of light. It expands the circle of love beyond the human sphere. It teaches that in the eyes of God, even the smallest creature has value and is cared for. His light is not anthropocentric, but biocentric, for all of life. 89. Light requires trained eyes. A layperson looking at a painting might only see patches of color, but a trained artist will see the composition, the lines, the shades, and even the soul of the author. Similarly, to see the light of God in daily events, we need to train our spiritual eyes through prayer, reflection, and the practice of love. Otherwise, God can pass by in our lives without us ever noticing. When the risen Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene, at first she did not recognize him. She thought he was the gardener. Her physical eyes were the same, but the eyes of her faith, then clouded by grief, were not yet trained to recognize him in a new form. Only when he called her name, Mary, did the light of recognition dawn. The Christian life is a continuous process of training to hear God call our name and to recognize Him in the unexpected gardeners of our lives. 90. Light is often hidden in the most ordinary things. We often look for God in grand events, in spectacular miracles. But the God of the Incarnation has a special fondness for hiding in what is utterly ordinary. His light can be found in the saltiness of salt, in a piece of shared bread, in a cup of cold water given. Learning to find the sacred in the mundane is the secret to a contemplative life. The story of the two disciples on the road to Emmaus is the most powerful evidence of this. They walked with Jesus for a long distance, heard Him explain the Scriptures, but still did not recognize Him. Their hearts were burning within them, but their eyes were still kept from recognizing Him. The aha moment, the moment the light dawned, was not when He performed a great miracle, but during an incredibly ordinary and familiar action. When He was at the table with them, He broke the bread. The divine light was hidden in the gesture of an evening meal, teaching us never to underestimate the mundane moments of life. 91. The light of wisdom knows when to be silent. Wisdom is not just knowing what to say, but also knowing when to say nothing. In a noisy world where everyone feels the need to express an opinion on everything, intentional silence can be an expression of light and strength. Silence to listen, silence to avoid causing hurt. Silence because one knows that words would be futile. When Jesus was tried before King Herod, the king was delighted because he was hoping to see him perform a sign. Herod plied him with many questions, but the Bible records, Jesus gave him no answer. Jesus knew that any words he spoke at that moment would only be treated as a performance, an entertainment. Herod's curiosity did not spring from a heart seeking truth. Therefore, the light of wisdom at that moment was silence. That silence exposed the superficiality and emptiness of the entire court. 92. The light of purpose turns a burden into a privilege. The same task, without a purpose, will be a tedious burden. But if it is illuminated by a noble purpose, it becomes a privilege and a joy. The light of purpose does not change the nature of the work, but it completely changes our attitude toward it. Washing another's feet in that society was the job of a slave, a despised burden. But at the Last Supper, when Jesus stooped to wash his disciples' feet, that act was transformed. It was no longer a burden, but was illuminated by a great purpose. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. The light of love and service turned a slave's job into a noble privilege, a symbol for the entire mission of a Christian. 93. Light is not afraid of smallness. Jesus often used very small images to describe the kingdom of heaven. A mustard seed, a bit of yeast, a lost coin. This philosophy teaches that God does not operate according to the world's logic, where bigger is always better. He often begins his greatest works from humble and almost invisible beginnings. Do not despise your small beginnings. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches." His call to the 12 disciples, fishermen, tax collectors, was like planting a mustard seed. In the scale of the Roman Empire, it was an incredibly small beginning, but the light of faith in that smallness allowed that mustard seed to grow into a great tree that shades the whole earth. 94. The light of truth is self-evident. You do not need to prove to someone standing in the sun that the sun exists. They can feel its warmth and see its light. Similarly, the truth of the gospel, when lived out fully, has the power to be self-authenticating. A life transformed by love and forgiveness is a more powerful proof than any philosophical argument. When the Pharisees questioned the man born blind, he could not argue with them theologically. They asked him about Jesus. "We know this man is a sinner." The man gave an immortal answer, a testament to the self-evident nature of light. "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." He didn't need to argue. His transformed life was the light, the undeniable proof. 95. The light of active waiting. Waiting is often seen as a passive state and a waste of time. But there is an active, light-filled waiting. It is the waiting of a watchman for the morning, of a farmer for the harvest. It is wakefulness, readiness, and preparation. The Christian life is one of active waiting, waiting for the Lord to come in glory. But while we wait, we actively work and light up the world. Jesus told the parable of the 10 virgins who went out to meet the bridegroom. All 10 were waiting, but 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. The difference was not in the waiting, but in how they waited. The 5 wise virgins brought extra oil. Their waiting was active, prepared waiting. Their light did not just burn at the beginning, but had enough fuel to last until the bridegroom arrived. He teaches that our waiting must not be a lazy waiting, but a waiting in watchfulness, always keeping the lamp of our faith filled with the oil of good deeds and prayer. And so our contemplative journey through the 95 profound philosophies on the teaching, "You are the light of the world," comes to an end. We have walked together from the most familiar concepts of a smile, a kind act, to the deepest layers of meaning about forgiveness, sacrifice, and the hope of the resurrection. This journey reminds us that becoming light is not a demand to become great, but a loving invitation to live out our identity in God to the fullest. It is the light of a humble mustard seed, of silent leaven, of an unhidden lamp, and of salt for the earth. It is a light not only to illuminate, but also to warm, not only to guide, but also to heal. The contemplative journey on this channel may pause here, but the real journey for each of us, the journey of becoming light right in the midst of everyday life, is only just beginning. Of the past 95 philosophies, which ray of light has touched your soul most deeply? And in your life, how have you been? Are you now? And will you be a light to the world in your own unique way? Please do not hesitate to share your thoughts and feelings in the comments section below. Each of your comments is also a ray of light, helping to warm our community. If the sharings from Church Audio bring you peace and inspiration, please show your support by clicking the subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss other meaningful contemplative journeys in the future. Your like and share are the simplest ways to help this flame spread to more souls in need of warmth. Church Audio sincerely thanks you for listening and for your companionship throughout this meaningful series. May each of us, in our own roles and circumstances, always be courageous and joyful in reflecting the light of God's love to the world. May God bless and grant peace to us all. Church Audio respectfully says goodbye and looks forward to seeing you in future programs, 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 in future